Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. That's unbelievable. Kamauri, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. It's amazing. I can't wait to talk about your story. So Vice President, Digital Marketing, Nike, that seems like a daunting job for anybody.
It's definitely a big task.
Yeah.
It's the biggest one I've ever had, but I just tell myself every day we're just having fun. We're having fun. We're having fun, and if it's not fun, then you're not doing the right thing.
Well, everybody knows Nike. I mean, it's a global brand. It's an unbelievable story. I've read Shoe Dog. I'm a huge fan of Phil Knight. We do have a little conflict in our office here at eHub because we have a few Washington fans, UW fans, and that doesn't mix well with the Oregon.
Yes, I know. I'm very well aware.
But still, everybody's a huge fan of the brand. And what I'm really interested in is your path to the position you find yourself in today.
Yes.
So maybe we can
start there.
We can jump into that. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up here in Salt Lake City, which is how you got me here today.
Yes.
I'm in town visiting family, but grew up in Salt Lake City. Am a child of immigrant parents, so hard work ethic was just what I saw. It was infused in my veins. That's what I knew to be true.
Yeah.
I also had brothers growing up, and it was also the Stockton to Malone era here, which is just, that was the religion in Utah.
Absolutely.
Basketball, was talk of the town, and anything we did was related probably somewhat to the Utah Jazz.
Oh, got you. Okay.
My grandmother, actually, who just recently passed, went to over 300 Jazz games. Wow. And she and her sister would wear these pink jerseys and show up in their commercials, and people would go up to take pictures of them at the game like they were the pink grandmas for the Utah Jazz. So sports was always just a really big part of our upbringing and childhood. I played soccer myself growing up here.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Did some track and field on accident. They were short a relay leg, and they told me, you're gonna go run that race on Saturday. And I thought, I don't even know how to do that. But I ended up running track in college from that experience. So just really lucky. Sport was a really big part of my upbringing. Ended up at the University of Portland, where I ran the 100 and the 200 and the 4x1.
So you ran the 100, the 200,
and the 4x1.
And the 4x1.
Yes.
And if we know anything about track,
yes,
the superstars run the 100 and the 200. No, that's true. And if you can complete the double, the 100 and 200, and then the relay in addition to that, then you're very much like Noah Lyles, right?
Well, I am no Noah Lyles
Sha'Carri
or
Richardson.
Sha'Carri Richardson.
Right here. Our very own.
But I always just, and it goes back to my earlier comment of just having fun. I had so much fun running around the track. And really, I think, how I got to how I am today, I think a lot of the discipline that, is rooted in being a student athlete is what translates now into my career, how I show up for teams, how I show up to parent. Because you've got to be, as you know, really, really focused on how you use the time that you do have in your day. You make every hour count. You make 20 minutes count. Sometimes 20 minutes is, I've got to take a nap for 20 minutes because I want to be really effective later in the day. So grew up running track and field. While I was at the University of Portland, social media was just starting.
Mm-hmm. Which year is this?
So my 2008, 2009, YouTube was starting.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter was just starting. And I got an internship at Portland Monthly Magazine, so a local magazine there. And the woman that I worked for, head of advertising, handed me a book called Twitter Bill. And she said, read this and decide if we need to open one of these accounts. So by the way, unpaid internship at the time. I don't even know if you can do that anymore. But
wow, way to go.
Go home, I'm reading this book about Twitter Bill, and I'm online. I'm like, God, this thing is really cool. You can talk to anyone in the world. Whether or not they answer is another thing, but this is so cool. So I become so fascinated. I end up launching their Twitter and their Facebook, and I'm their first really ever community manager. And so I'm responding to people who have these questions, and I think to myself, and by the way, at the time, I'm thinking I'm going to go to law school. I'm studying organizational communication and political science. And I'm thinking I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to follow this path because that probably seems like a solid path.
Sure. It does.
It does. And I'm laying in bed at night thinking, God, this thing is really fun, this community management and this. Because really what that is just people talking to people. I love talking to people. I love building community. And I thought, now if I could translate this and do it with something related to sport, I'm going to hit the jackpot. So an internship opens up at our university.
Yeah, at this University of Portland.
University of Portland.
You're a pilot.
I'm a pilot.
Yeah. By the way.
We're just mascot, but I'm a pilot, yes.
Well, but the pilot is not
it's a river
plane.
boat.
It's not an airplane pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
riverboat pilot.
It's a riverboat pilot.
So that's even more weird.
So yeah, did you know that a riverboat? It's not. He's not. Wasn't he the captain? He's a riverboat pilot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So strange. But while I'm
At
there,
least you're not like a banana slug.
Yeah, that's true. It could be worse.
Yeah,
it could be worse.
Absolutely.
While I'm there, I meet the most awesome man, Coach Eric Reveneau, who's now an assistant coach at Stanford for their basketball program.
Which is his second stint.
His second stint at Stanford.
At Stanford.
Yes.
So he was at Stanford, and then he came over to University of Portland, head coach.
Yes.
This is a great story. I love this story. I'm a little familiar with it. And so you got involved with the basketball team.
I got involved with the basketball team. And I'm running their Twitter and running their Facebook, and I have this idea. We're about to play Kentucky, which would never happen. It's like a preseason type of thing.
The University of Portland is playing. This isn't Kentucky like Kentucky State
like
or Kentucky Community College.
Which is like
this is the real
like,
UK Kentucky.
Think about that.
Yeah,
it's probably not going to go well. But
probably not.
Probably a probable bet. It's not going to go well.
Probably not. Yeah.
But I'm like, oh my gosh, how fun! I'm going to make videos of all the players on and people around campus on what they think is going to happen.
Oh.
So I start posting these things, and they get picked up. And the next thing I know, this ESPN writer picks up this video I make for Facebook, and is like, here are these pilot predictions. And I'm like, oh my god, this ESPN writer is picking up my dinky Facebook video. And so I start to get this fire in me of like, oh my gosh, I think there's really something here, and this is going to be something way bigger. Coach Reveneau at the time says, hey, I'm going to introduce you to this guy at Nike. His name is Andy Pulowski. Andy was overseeing Nike digital basketball at the time. The digital team at Nike at this time was about 10 full-time people. It was a small team because the space was brand new.
Yeah.
So Andy takes time with me throughout the year to listen to my crazy ideas and sit and make time to have breakfast with me. I'm getting near towards graduation. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And Andy invites me to campus.
This is the Nike campus.
This is the Nike World headquarters. And he says, hey, I'd like to invite you to sit in on some meetings. By the way, now, I'm like, that's insane that he would even open that door to offer that.
Yeah, you're like a senior in college, going to the Nike campus, going to sit in on meetings. Yeah.
Those meetings ended up being 3 interviews. I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt.
Why not?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and it's now our head of North American marketing, and he's like, "Can you do this?" And I'm thinking in my head, "Oh my God, I have no idea what he's talking about." Yes, I can. Of course, I can.
No question.
And so I start Nike 2 weeks later.
Oh my gosh! And you had not had you graduated at this point?
At that point, I had just graduated.
Oh, okay.
And I was still working at the magazine too. I always had multiple jobs. I never not was working. So I'd run track, go to school, finish, and go to the internship. And so I was always working multiple things. But it was a dream, and the contract was only supposed to last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 months became a year, and then a year became. So it just kind of took shape over the course of its time. But I always tell people when I started Nike, and on that team, it was so special because that space was the wild, wild west. These channels were organic. Instagram's chronological. Actually, Instagram hadn't even launched then. And so we were just trying stuff and testing stuff. And it's so amazing because Nike as a brand is known for risk-taking and innovation.
Yeah, being out in front.
And they totally let us do that in that space. We were the first brand to ever launch customer service on Twitter. We didn't do that during that time. After we did that, Delta followed, Amex followed, Airbnb followed. And that was a bunch of us sitting in a conference room saying, oh my gosh, what should this be called? What should this be called? Should it be a person?
Yeah.
Should be a handle? But we know we want to service people because that's at the core, it's serving athletes. This is just a modern way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There was one point, do you remember the Fuel Band?
Oh, yeah.
I still have many of them.
You do.
I was on the community team for the social team for the Fuel Band.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew our community online intimately. Like I could tell you today, 5 of their names, what their goals were for themselves, what they were trying to do, because we had so much conversation and dialogue with those people.
Yeah.
So it's just a modern way to build community. And so I just love, that's why I'm so passionate about social in general in this space, even though it's a pay-to-play model in many cases now.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there are just pockets of really strong organic engagement when you build relationships well.
Mm-hmm.
People do want to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So that's really what that first phase at Nike was about.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I want to dig into more of your experience with Nike and the things that you built. But you brought up a few things about your past I'd like to talk about. So it sounds like you had this foundation in hard work and discipline growing up.
Yes.
And how has that served you? I mean, as you look back across your career so far, and you're still so young in this career, you have a long time to go, but how has that served you? And how can you make that an example for others who are trying to find their way?
Phil Knight has this amazing quote where he talks about, you can outrun or beat the competition, but it's about beating yourself. And I think that has really stuck with me in terms of thinking about my upbringing, because it was really about, can you do your best? That was always the question from my mom. Was this your best effort? And, if you'd show up at home with your paper and you got your grade or something, was this your best effort?
Yeah, I've been there before.
My coach, same thing, soccer coach. Was that your best effort? And so these things kind of stuck with me over time, was take pride in yourself. And so that has really translated all the way from when I started my career to where I am now, and hopefully will continue on, is I'm never really just trying to do something because someone asked me to. I'm trying to do it so well because I want to prove to myself that was the best possible way, thing that I could do. It was my best effort. And to be able to sleep at night knowing that. Mm-hmm. And I think, and then also the fun piece. I think the fun piece is really important. I always talk about how, my grandparents came here from Myanmar. I think my grandfather had $200 in his pocket. Mm. You saw how hard they worked, the graveyard shift, and it was always hard work. And I just thought to myself, what a privilege to get to enjoy what I get to do. They by no means loved what they had to do. It was a means to an end to provide for the family. Mm-hmm. Same thing, my mother, hardest working woman I know. She works night and day. She's always available, but she finds joy in it. Although I don't think that was not her original path to go from a career standpoint. But to me, I just also want to show up every single day because I recognize what a privilege it is to get to do something that I enjoy, because not everyone is fortunate to do that.
Well, you also mentioned something about you had a plan. You were going to, political science,
yes,
go to law school.
Yes.
And along that path, you found something that maybe you discovered something that maybe you were passionate about.
Yes.
And I think that's critical, because the thought of winning every day and giving your best effort every day, when you're aligned with your passion, it feels like it's much easier.
Yes.
You provide yourself a better opportunity to be your best every single day.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about finding your passion and not being stuck in kind of this path.
Yes. Well, for me personally, it was about trying a lot of things. So one internship I didn't talk about. So I worked at the magazine, And I had the summer, because that magazine internship was unpaid, I needed to make some money as we needed to.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting an internship to work at a financial nonprofit in Oregon doing their social media. 9 to 5, cubicle, showed up. And I thought, oh my God, I don't think that I can do this. But it was so valuable because I recognized, gosh, when I'm at the magazine, I have all these ideas. I'm coming up with things. People want to hear these ideas. They're entertaining them at least. And I'm finding that that's really fun. And when I'm going to this financial nonprofit and they're talking about finances, which I should probably be better about, I am not at all finding this excitement. I find myself having a hard time to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
I'm feeling bored and tired sitting in the same place for 8 hours a day. Gosh, I don't think that I want to spend my whole life doing this. So I always tell people, because they'll come to me, I mentor a lot of young people, and they'll say, I'm really disappointed in myself for not landing this gig at this company or this. And I always say to them, well, just start somewhere. Just start doing something. Because whether you love it or you don't like it, they're both valuable lessons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from not liking that experience, I recognized, okay, I can really specifically identify the pieces I do love about this magazine job, and how do I take the pieces of that and inch it a little bit closer and marry that to my passions of sports, lifestyle, fashion, etc.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a really great lesson in there, because there are a lot of people who don't ever get to live their passion. And it is a daily grind. And there's something to be said for the individual who figures out a way to be their best every day, even when they don't align necessarily with the thing they're doing. In fact, I can't remember some NFL player who said something about discipline, and discipline is doing the thing you hate the most like you love it the best. So we're kind of fortunate.
Yes,
we're very fortunate.
We're very fortunate
to find things that we really like to do and that we're passionate about, and that makes it easy. But the stuff that you grew up with and the stuff that you saw is an extremely valuable lesson. Grandparents, parents who just had to grind to make things work. And there's something, there's something really valuable in that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a great story. You also mentioned that you loved running. You were happy running around the track. I don't know. Do you want to explain that a little bit more? Because there's not a lot of, that's not easy.
Yes.
That's not an easy thing. That's a grind.
Yes. So I work with this executive coach, and she just pointed out to me recently, the other week, she and I were chatting, and she was like, your life is like running around a track. She was like, you like to go as hard as you. She was like, you literally love this journey. You like to go really hard, and then you like to recover. You like to go really hard, and you just find joy just doing it over and over. And I never made the connection. And she goes, how'd you never make this connection? And I said, I don't know. Never had anyone stop to really point that out to me. But I think it's because when you're running around a track, I think about nothing. I'm so just like in the zone. I'm so calm in a lot of ways, and I'm just in a flow state. And when you're at your flow state, you're just, able to just, you're at peace and you're feeling free. Yeah. And so when she said, you're like that in your work, I thought, how's that possible? And she said, I think that you're able to really find this kind of flow state in the work. And also it's interesting because while track is an individual sport, so much of it is your teammates. And being surrounded by those who are trying to maybe chase your exact same goal, trying to outrun one another, but all in this way that you care about one another. And so that has translated a lot also into how I show up at work, how I show up for my teammates. We're all in this, but I will put in the work to outrun you because I know you can outrun me too. And because I want to make you better. Yeah. And so that is totally part of it. But yeah, she just made that connection for me recently the other week.
So how do how do you find yourself? How do you get yourself into that flow state? Is that pretty natural for you? Is it something that you've just worked on over time?
You know what, I get a lot of energy from people. I'm a huge people person. So, and actually every Friday afternoon, I actually block off my calendar just to connect with people outside of Nike. Sometimes that's my executive coach. Sometimes that's people I'm mentoring. Sometimes that's just interesting people in the industry that I've asked others to connect me with, because that gives me energy. That allows me to then step into the week on Monday and take it head on with, I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling like I gave. I'm feeling like I'm getting something. And so that's how I'm really able to kind of keep going.
Yeah.
Is because I take just small moments to really feed myself. And those Friday afternoons, I always say, are like my most precious time for me individually.
Oh, I think it's great. That's an unbelievable lesson. And I think a lot of people go into the weekend like, oh, finally the weekend. And then, oh, Monday, I'm not ready for Monday. But you've taken a different approach. You prepare yourself
for the following week.
For Monday. I think that's amazing.
Yes.
What a great lesson.
And it's that athlete mindset again. It's
recovery and
preparation.
Yeah.
Everyone I love clothes. Ellie knows this. I love shopping and I love clothes. But I plan all my outfits on Sunday. But I do that Sunday night.
Wait.
Also, David Beckham does this. Someone told me this.
All your outfits for the week?
On Sunday evening.
On Sunday evening. Yeah. Did you watch the documentary?
Love that documentary.
Yeah. Didn't he talk about that? Like, he is super...
Yes. My husband looked at me and he was like, I think
he's OCD, right? Is that you?
I probably am too. Non-diagnosed, but...
In a good way.
But I do that on Sunday evening. So, because I have a little one, like you mentioned, I have a little one. And so it's so I can optimize time with him in the morning, that I'm not thinking about what I'm going to wear that day. And I want to show up and feel good so that I can, do things well. I think that's a huge part of being able to perform, is you want to feel good and you want to look good.
Yeah.
So I do that Sunday evening. So all these things are around optimization, but I really feel like a huge part of that was just being an athlete.
Well, I have a question for you about that, laying out your clothes on Sunday evening, because, like, don't you just have like a closet full of Nike stuff, and you just are like picking out your Nike gear? Or don't you have someone at Nike who's like, okay, here's your Monday outfit, here's your Tuesday, like golfers, like Rory McIlroy, who's a Nike guy, like they just give him the outfits that he's wearing for the tournament. That doesn't happen for you?
You know what? Styling has just been, I love shopping my own closet. So yes, I have tons of Nike stuff, but I love to mix and match things. Today I almost wore, I found this really cool Brazil jersey that I had from 2011. And I just love finding like my older pieces and pairing them with newer pieces. And I think I like having conversation starters. It's really fun too to think about, who am I meeting this week? Yeah. What's going on in the sporting world this week that I want to represent that in some way, or so there's just things like that it's sort of fun. And this is a little bit of, I also think it's a minor way of also how to build culture.
No doubt. Okay. So you don't have to wear Nike every day. Is that true?
You don't, but we love to.
Okay. How much Under Armour gear do you own?
Oh my God, we can't even bring that name up in here. 0, 0, 0, negative a million. 0.
Negative a million. Is that a number? Is negative a million a thing?
Absolutely not.
You have a black hole in your closet that says Under Armour.
When my nephew Simon was at Berkeley.
Simon Kwan, by the way, is a fantastic golfer. He's down at BYU right now. He was at Cal.
Yes.
He's down at BYU. He won the state am a year ago, and then this year he had a very unfortunate incident that occurred in the tournament. But keep that name in mind.
Yes. I'm going to be working as his agent one day.
Yes.
I'll be making a transfer.
So Simon Kwan, and am I giving up too much? People probably already know that he's the grandson of the U.S. Open champion, Johnny Miller.
Yes.
Which is also amazing.
Yes.
Johnny Miller still, I don't know, maybe you're
another
too young.
living legend.
He is a living legend, still to this day, favorite golf broadcaster of all time.
Yes.
Johnny Miller was the best.
Yes.
He was the best.
Yes.
I would call him objective. Some people say he was beyond the point of objectivity, but he was great. Anyway, back to the story.
Simon calls from at Cal and he's like, "What do we have to do to get Nike back sponsoring the school? Because I hate wearing Under Armour."
That other brand
that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why he's back at BYU. Because it's with the right brand.
Well, I think his uncle might be a coach down there too. That may have
Just a couple of reasons why.
Something to do with it. Well, yeah. As you can see, I have my Nike gear on today. I'm super excited about it. I love a quarter zip. And I'll just say this. I have worn all the brands. Like, I like athletic gear. But Nike has a way of making stuff that just seems, it's stylish, it fits, it's really functional, really good stuff. I only wish that Nike were still more in golf. When Nike kind of got out of golf, I mean, that was kind of a sad day for a lot of us.
You and my husband both.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's and I was out looking for some, and it was like there's golf stuff, but not like the mass that used to be out there. Anyway, so this outfit that I have on here today with my Jordans. I'm sad they can't see the
full thing.
I know, it's amazing.
Really head to toe.
It is
everything.
Nice. But including the belt, I was really interested in getting like an old school, like oversized Nike sweatsuit that's what I was going to wear. And then I was counseled that maybe that didn't look as professional for the podcast. So I ended up with this, a nice professional golf.
I hope we find another moment to see that, because I think that's a fashionable moment.
We could. We're doing this thing with your. Wait, is Ellie your niece?
Ellie is my niece.
Yes, with Ellie, and Ellie's going to be doing this thing called Fridays with Frank. And so maybe on one of those Fridays, Ellie, I'll come full head to toe in my old school Nike.
People need to see that, Ellie. Make sure that happens.
Yeah. You had an interesting, there was just something you posted on LinkedIn about Coach Rev and his lessons on leadership, which I thought was really, really good, really insightful. And you commented on that.
Yes.
And I know leadership is something that you think about and that's meaningful to you. And so I can see the path growing up. Like these are things that you are really thoughtful about. Is that another one of those experiences that you had being in an athletic arena, running the digital, the social marketing, and then had this experience to interact with the guy who was pretty influential in your life?
I think so. I think the theme in a lot of people who have been core to my trajectory have had a couple of similar traits. And one, they always care. Like it just comes from a place of care. Two, then they're really hard on me. So these things married together of like and actually later in life, I recognized that there's a name for this. It's generative leadership. It is leading people with a kind and caring spirit, but also so that when you need to be, you can be hard on them.
Yeah.
And, to me, I think that that's really unique, because I always felt like when these people push me, people were giving me feedback or coaching me around the track, it's because they cared about me. And so I think that has really, Coach Rev, I think, was a perfect example of that. He was less tough on me because I wasn't his player, worked for his program, but but I saw a lot of the way in which he coached that team, which is, I'm going to be tough on you, and I'm going to be the hardest coach you've ever had because I care about you to be great. And I think that is something that a lot of people, if they just knew that earlier on in life, that there's language for that, is such a powerful tool. I was really grateful to unlock that, but actually, this goes a little bit to my time when I left Nike.
And you went to Twitter.
I had an interview with this woman, Jen Prince, who's now the COO of the Rams. She is a total badass, mom of three, just superwoman. Asked me on the phone, her first interview question was, how can I develop you as a leader? I was really junior. I was just starting my career, and I had never had anyone ask me that. And And I didn't want to leave Nike necessarily. I was drinking the Kool-Aid so hard. It was this dream job. And I'm thinking, God,
Yeah.
I can't be actually thinking about leaving this place. But I went home that night and I couldn't stop thinking about her question. And I thought, maybe this is somebody that I need to work for. Nike will always be here. I will always love it. And I think I need to go work for this person because she's just got me thinking, what if?
Mm-hmm.
So I pack up my car, my tiny Yaris. I drive down the one. And 2 weeks later, I'm living in LA. And I'm working for this woman. And it was the strangest thing. I remember, a lot of tech companies, they have free food, et cetera. And so it was lunchtime at that office, and the office manager is like, hey, the food's here. And I go and get a plate, and I sit back down at my desk, and someone says, what are you doing? Eating my lunch? No, we all eat together. Came out, sat at this communal table. I'm thinking, what is this cult that I have joined?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so amazing because during those lunches, we would teach one another. We would help one another with client problems. That was the culture she was building. During that time, she was over media and entertainment for Twitter sales, and which brought in the highest gross revenue for the organization. She did that, I really believe, because she built and fostered this culture of people who wanted to help each other, were hard on each other, were there for one another. And many of us still very good friends to this day. And I thought, that was such a unique lesson for me to then take on to other things. Now, personally, at that time, I didn't love the entertainment industry. It wasn't for me. I think you see certain things and you think certain things, and then you realize you have to walk into a studio and wear high heels and a skirt. And, I don't really do that. So I think culturally, as if in terms of topic, I thought, God, I still really miss talking about sports.
Mm-hmm.
I miss walking into an office and someone saying, whoa, you're wearing Jordan 4s? That's so cool. I didn't realize how important that was to me.
Yeah.
And so I think back to your question earlier about finding your passion, equally as valuable to recognize the things that are not for you.
Yeah.
And that, again, in that moment was, wow, you know what? This really actually validated there are so many things at Nike that I do love, but maybe I can go back and bring some of these lessons that I've learned into Nike.
Yeah.
So Nike, this was 2015. Nike asked me to come back and oversee their digital team in the LA office. This is when Mark Parker had said, we're going to have a city up strategy. And we're going to say, we're going to name a couple of key cities, and we're going to go really hard in that city, and LA being one of them, because we had All-Star Weekend coming, and really these kind of big tentpole moments. So they wanted to invest in talent and build up the city. And I called a mentor of mine who's an incredible executive coach now, and she spent a career at Nike and Wieden and Kennedy, almost about 25 years. I said, should I go back? And she said, you can go back and be the leader you want to be. And if you don't like it, you can leave because you've already left once. So what's the harm? I thought, you're right. There's really nothing to lose here. And I get to stay in LA and do yoga on the beach. There's really nothing to lose here. So I joined back at Nike in their LA office, walk in, and probably had some of the most fun years of my entire career. I did everything from overseeing digital marketing to brand experiences. So under brand experience was all the physical events, the experiential side.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, again, a unique moment in my career because I was told overnight, this person who has 20 plus years of experience in events now reports to you.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because you left. So you left Nike. Would it be fair to say in a junior position?
Totally junior position.
Okay.
Yes.
You go to Twitter. You're at Twitter for 4 years?
I was actually only at Twitter for a year and a half.
That was it?
That was it.
And so, but valuable lessons from Twitter. I think the one that you mentioned, including where you want to be.
Where I want to be, yes.
Yeah.
It validated where I want to be.
Okay. And so great leadership lessons. And now you're back at Nike.
Yes.
But in a leadership role.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
several people reporting to you, including people who
have long tenure.
Yeah, in the industry much would be considered senior
Yes.
to your experience
Yes.
level. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
you've talked about, I love this thing about leadership is not, sure, leadership is about putting your arm around somebody and saying, hey, you got this,
Yes.
we can do this.
Yes.
You have all the stuff. You just, but leadership is also about providing critical, objective, and sometimes what can feel like harsh feedback. I think that's how people grow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now you tell me
Yes.
how you find yourself in that position with
Yes.
someone who is maybe
Yes.
more senior
And
in
who
their
is-
role.
And who is, by the way, basically like a maternal figure to me in that office.
Yeah.
And so here I am, sat down and said, and told, okay, so this person's now going to report into you, and you've got to figure that out. And I'm finding myself so scared. I don't know how to handle this. So here's lesson number 1 that I've now continued to also take with me is vulnerability. Sat down with this person. I respect the hell out of you, and you know more about this than I will ever know. I am, yes, your boss on paper now, but you're still going to call the shots here because you are the expert in this space. But how can we teach each other? What can I give you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think I could give you? Here's what I think I could give you. Here's what I know you are amazing at on paper. And we were able to find this real mutual respect for one another in order to get to where we are. We're still friends today. She's amazing. So that was a really big leadership lesson. The other theme in that now carries on to every role after that is the organization's now going to ask me to do things I've never done before that I'm not an expert in. So this, for any young people listening to this, you kind of start your career thinking, I'm going to be the social girl forever, and I'm going to, be in this digital space forever, Ellie Kwan, and which is awesome. But sometimes great coaches see things in you that you don't see in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
i.e. that you can lead bigger teams, i.e. that you can solve complex problems. And that's a really cool thing about Nike's culture too, is you see them do this a lot. They put people in different parts of the organization that they might not have any background in
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out. And I think that that's a huge, huge, huge part of why we're able to innovate.
I'm reading this book right now. It probably doesn't sound related. It's called The Splendid and the Vile. Have you heard of this book?
No.
It's about Winston Churchill and when he took over as prime minister during World War II, and he's trying to engage the United States. He thought the path to victory for Great Britain and for France, for the Allies, was to engage the United States. And so he's going through this whole process, and he's just been named prime minister, and now he has to put together his team. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting that you mentioned that, like finding people, putting people in positions where they don't think that they can necessarily thrive, but they have all of the stuff
Yes.
to thrive.
Yes.
And so that's what he did, is like he found the right people
Yes.
to put in the critical positions, and they
Yes.
may not have had
Yes.
a lot of experience
Yes.
in that particular role,
Yes.
but they had a lot of other
Yes.
experience that was really
Just
beneficial.
also valuable for people to recognize that in these moments, it's all about self, right? You're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I'm not the right person for this. Your leader and your coach is looking at it from a horizontal point of view
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about, I have you here because I'm thinking about the makeup of you as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not thinking of you as just this, but that's in those really important moments to actually try to remove yourself if you're for any reason finding yourself in a situation where you're thinking, I don't know if that's right for me, or I'm not really excited about that. Got to remove yourself out of the situation for a moment to say, okay, let me look across and say, how do we all connect as a whole? Now I'm realizing that this is what I contribute to this team. That's why I'm being asked to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really valuable piece too that I've totally come to recognize is, even, and we'll get to this role that I'm in now, but I remember thinking, oh my gosh, are you sure? Okay, yes, actually, as I look across the table, I can see our complements as a leadership team. Okay, yes, now this makes sense. So being able to remove yourself and look horizontal.
How important is it for a leader, for a coach, to be engaged with all of the players and whether or not they're thriving
Yes.
and finding alignment with their
Yes.
talents?
Yes. Well, when I was managing smaller teams, very important, like consistent, dedicated one-on-ones. Again, back to the athlete piece, that is, it's part of your training time. If you're not making time to sit down and show people, what's going awesome and celebrate those wins to make them feel good and say, you have a little broccoli in your teeth and I want to tell you about that because I care about you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're not going to get better. You're not going to get what you need out of that person. You're going to get frustrated. It's not great for anybody. So I think consistent one-on-one time is something that I still feel really strongly about. One thing I'm learning over time as my teams have gotten bigger is, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be hands-on with every single person. So my executive coach just said to me the other month, because I'm 90 days into this new gig, one of the first things I planned to do was to have one-on-ones with all of them. And she said, the next time you see them all together, you need to let them know that was amazing. You're not going to be as available to do that all the time. And she said, make sure people know that.
Oh, that's going to be like a one-time, you want to
because in my last team, I was able to do that.
With a smaller team.
Sure. Because I felt that was part of my superpower, was to be able to really deeply connect with people.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to need to find a way to do that in another way with this larger set of folks.
Okay, so 90 days in.
Some 90 days in.
How do you do that? I mean, we've seen, you've been involved with athletics. I've been involved with athletics, and I've been involved with teams in a corporate scenario, and there's lazy leadership. I mean, that just exists.
Yes.
And lazy leadership means that somebody might be put in a position and that person is not thriving.
Yep.
And the leader is not taking charge of that.
Yes.
For whatever reason. Yes. So with a smaller team, you can manage that. You can see that more closely. How do you manage that? How do you avoid lazy leadership? Because you don't have the capacity to visit with 60 people or 90 people or however many people are reporting to you.
Yes. Well, someone who I look up to was telling me a long time ago, you got to find those few folks on your team who are just going to blindly run at your vision the same way that you would. And you got to really invest in those people, because it's like spreading a gospel. Mm-hmm. They're going to go out there when you're not there. Mm-hmm. And they're going to really get out there and make sure that people around them are really getting after those same goals. And for the folks that don't, you will sense that, and you'll know, and you need to go right at that. Don't wait for their boss to, because maybe their boss already isn't addressing it, and you go at that directly, because also that one person can be quite toxic too. Mm-hmm. And it can take energy into a different way. So in this new leadership role, I mean, one of the first things we did with the leadership team was just get in a room for 2 days and say, what are our values? Mm-hmm. As individuals, this team, what do we think this team needs? Let's write that on paper. Let's write down where we want to go, what we believe we can do as a team. And we need to commit to that. And if we can commit to that, then we'll start to bring everyone else along. So I do quarterly all hands with everyone in monthly town halls. And the all hands are really important, because these are more big share out moments for me of where we are going. Mm-hmm. And then the town halls are more, I want you to teach one another. Yeah. I want you to know what's going on with one another. And I find that is actually one of my most favorite moments now, because I think it allows them to realize, oh my gosh, like this person is showing up for this full team in their own way. I want to too. Versus it's different when I'm telling them, versus they could just be inspired by one. Oh my, and it goes back to that. Well, I think I could outrun that person. And, not in a facetious way, but more of like, I want to be really awesome and great too. I'm going to show up at the next month's town hall to show what I did.
Yeah. It's almost like being a parent in a way, because at some point in my kids' lives, I've coached all of them. Yeah. But I always felt like if they could get the same or similar message from an independent third party, someone who's not their parent, it's more valuable. It is. It feels. It is. And it feels like it's ingrained in the individual more than me saying, yes, do this. Yes. So anyway, I think that's a really nice way to approach teams, is that you have an opportunity to lead on a stage, but then you give everyone else on the team an opportunity to lead as well.
I think on your question too of lazy leadership, if you see it, I don't wait for it to fester and get more lazy. It's like, we don't have time for that. Mm-hmm. So when I see it too, I find a way to, I was just talking to my team about managing conflict a month ago, and I was saying, you guys have to learn how to label things. We have these, I think corporate organizations in general have niceties. It's like, oh, let's just
Absolutely.
nod, say yes, and have niceties.
Sure.
When I really think about how it's actually really nice to say to someone, you know what? I think if we walk into the room with that idea, it's not going to go well for any of us. So we should probably address that now.
Yeah.
But instead, sometimes you just say, yeah, that's a good idea, and it happens, and you're like, oh God, I knew that was going to happen.
I'm curious about this because Nike obviously has this foundation in athletics. And in athletics, if the coach isn't engaging with you consistently, then you're gone. Like,
yes.
There's no care, then you are
yes.
gone.
Yes.
And so the best thing that can
yes.
happen to you is for a coach to be engaged, even if it's critical, to be
yes.
engaging with you
yes.
regularly.
Yes.
And I wonder about the culture at Nike based in athletics and based in this thought of addressing issues right now up
yep.
front that
yep.
maybe in the corporate
yep.
world outside of athletics we don't address. Yep. Tell me about that. Is that a cultural thing at Nike? Is that? Go ahead.
I think what's really special is when it's time to come into the locker room.
Yeah.
It's when it's halftime, you got to come into the locker room and have a really serious conversation about things not going the way it needs to go. And so I think that is really special about our culture is we know when to call those moments. We know how to have the conversation. Whether we do them enough is probably the question. And that's why I really go back to, as I'm stepping into this new team, driving a lot of consistency, driving a lot of clarity around what the moments are for, what we're getting out of them, and also creating feedback loops. Is this not helpful for you? I think what's really cool about working also in corporate organizations today to do this well is you've got things like Slack or Google Chat. So, I tell myself, like I have little reminders next to my laptop in my office, but it's like, make sure to engage in the team Slack once a day.
Mm-hmm.
There's just small things like that because you are contributing to the locker room.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on my computer too because that is a huge downfall of mine.
And I can't
Slack.
tell you how much people love that.
Yeah,
and
you're probably right. In fact, I'm sure you're right.
And I don't do it because, I'm good at remembering that. But I do it because it's such a difference when you drop something cool you've seen in there versus everyone else sharing with one another, right?
Yeah.
Like it has weight to it.
Yeah.
The other day I was, obviously we're the digital marketing team, so we're paying attention to what's happening in the digital space. And I dropped in the team Slack the other month, hey, Kevin Wheel from Instagram and Twitter is now at OpenAI. We should watch this space. He's probably going to hire a lot of folks, came from those platforms over to OpenAI. This is, we don't even know what AI is going to do to our experience, our digital experience in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Let's watch this space. I had every month before these town halls, I get feedback. I ask people, hey, how's it going? And I share anonymously. I open up every town hall with, here's what I'm hearing from the team.
Mm.
And someone wrote, I love that she engages in Slack. Again, it builds the culture.
Sure.
So these small things I think really are, and it makes it easier when you have to have a locker room moment because it's not like I've been away, like, mom's been away for a long time doing God knows what, and she comes back and to scold us.
Yeah.
No, I've been in it with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm in it with you. I'm showing up at practice. I see what's going on, and we got to get into the locker room and have a hard conversation.
Yeah. I love all of the athletics analogies because I think it's so powerful. And I think that just the lessons you can take from the competitive field, it's really difficult to replicate that anywhere else. And so the best that you can do that in the corporate setting, I love that. Let's take it to halftime. I mean, you have to, that's the thing about athletics is you're getting constant moment by moment feedback on everything that is happening and everything that you're doing. Yep. And that is the path to improvement. So I really love that. Let's talk about your current role and what you do with Nike and how that affects the ecosystem at the company.
Yeah, so I am, like you said, the vice president of global digital marketing now. So underneath me, we've got social media,
mm-hmm.
which is, it is a homecoming for me, by the way, coming back to this team.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 4 times the size it was the first time I was on it. But We've got social media under me. We've got a Nike membership. We have sneakers, our sneakers app that you and I were just chatting about briefly. And we also have folks who oversee digital marketing, our consumer experience for basketball, for running, for football, for, I'm forgetting a sport, but each of the sports essentially. And so if we are launching, a new shoe, or we've got a new sport moment, we have a sport moment coming up, those folks are in charge of building those plans alongside the brand teams.
Gotcha.
So the brand teams might come and say, hey, so-and-so is going to, break this world record in this race. We've got this new shoe coming out, and how do we want to bring this to the world?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the platforms we want to use, and what's the mix we want to bring to life? And, we get in a room, and again, most of us are athletes, so you try to start your brainstorm in an untraditional way versus, okay, it's the same team always. It's like, no, who actually, back to your point on passion, who grew up playing hoops? Who knows this space? Who follows all these accounts? Let's get these folks together. And then, we might get to some sort of enough spaghetti that sticks on the wall. Mm-hmm. Once the spaghetti sticks, and you stick that into a beautiful keynote, because we love our beautiful keynotes, we go sell it in. And I always tell the team, because sometimes you have more junior folks who are nervous to present in these forums. We love a little presentation theater. And I always tell people, and I always ask people the same question every time before they walk into the room. Do you love this idea? They say, yeah. Okay, great. You love it, so it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You'll walk in with conviction because you love it. Mm-hmm. And I can always tell when people come and present things to me and they don't love it. I will actually stop them and say, guys, do you love this work? Prior to this digital role, I was the women's creative director for Nike. I had no traditional design background, by the way. I didn't go to a fancy art school. Overseeing creative direction for women's. I was seeing some work come back, and I just knew that I could see in their faces, like they were just trying to sell me on it, and I knew they didn't love it. And I stopped them and I said, guys, do you love this work? Well, then they start telling me all these, issues they had happen on set, production. There were all these challenges. And I said, guys, well, next time come in and let's talk about that. I want you to walk in and say, hey, Cam, here are the couple of shots we really love, we know we nailed. And here's where we need some help now managing expectations, because we just didn't get probably what we needed to get because everything happened. I said, never walk in here and try to sell me something you don't love. It's just not going to fly.
And when you're talking about the stuff that you don't love or the stuff that you love, you're not at all involved with the product design.
In that role, you get exposure to product design upstream. So you know what they're making, and you know the reason they made your shoe black, or the reason so you know all of that. You're not touching it yourself.
Yeah, it's a really cool shoe, by the way. You can't see the detail on the toe here, but it's kind of like a little bit of, I don't know what you would call that. Speckled?
But see, the stitching here is really nice.
Yeah.
So when our teams get briefed, they bring the product, so you get to hold it and you get to look at it. So you know what you're marketing, right?
Okay, well, I have a question about that.
Okay.
What if they bring you something and you're thinking to yourself, this is terrible. This is horrible.
The brand marketing team, they're really the quarterbacks. So that at Nike, we think of brand management as quarterbacks. They're in charge of saying, okay, this is this launch, and here are all the teams. I think about it like a sun. Who are all the parts of the sun that we got to bring in order to launch this really well? Sometimes it's just one team. Sometimes you're like, in order to launch this shoe really well, we need to get it on like 100 cool people. And that's just one partner. Sometimes to do it well, you need to turn everything on. You need PR, you need cool people, you need athletes, you need digital marketing, you need social media, you need everything. It's not always the case for every single launch. Yeah. So if you get a piece, if you see a piece of product and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this, we speak up and we talk about it. Sometimes you can influence a colorway change. Sometimes you can influence. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes you're also not meant to love every single product because it's not always for you too. So it's also really thinking about, okay, should I share this because I'm not the consumer, or should I share this because I have valuable insight to I know what the consumer would love, so I'm going to speak up here.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be super challenging.
It is. It's really challenging.
Because, I mean, no offense to anybody.
Yeah.
With all due respect.
Yes.
That means now I can say whatever I want. when I say that, with all due respect. Like Nike's come out with some stinkers.
Yeah.
And I just like it feels like it's such an organization, like you said earlier, built on innovation and style and being really reactive, or maybe not reactive is the word, but understanding the market and what the market wants, or maybe giving the market something they don't know they want, but they really want that.
Yep.
And so it's always interesting when something comes out and you're like, oh man, that one kind of didn't make it.
Well, I think at the end of the day too, it's you can share your feedback. You got to respect the call, right?
Sure.
You respect the expert.
Yeah.
So we can share feedback to the design teams, or someone could come back and say, we don't like that social media plan, or we don't like the way that, you know, this product is showing up on Nike.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you listen. And sometimes that does change your decision. Sometimes you tell them, I need you to respect my call. I'm the expert here. Just need you to respect the call.
Gotcha.
So it's a little bit of that give and take.
I'm going to stick with your sports analogies here, and I'm going to call this one watching the game tape. Okay, so let's say you have a launch, and the launch doesn't do what you expected it to do, it doesn't go as well. How do you review that? How do you come back and watch the game tape and improve?
Well, you know, usually for big moments, you have a little bit of like a 24-hour feedback. You know, you're obviously paying attention to how it's going, what the consumer is saying, what the traffic is to these destinations. And if you're not seeing it hit benchmarks, you quickly gather the troops. It's like, all right, guys, we got to come in because we need to pivot this plan. And that is something that I think is pretty amazing. We're a gigantic organization, but when we need to make pivots, people come together fast to go in a new direction. We're always ready for plan A, B, C, D. You know, you've kind of thought about, this could happen. Yeah. You know, especially when it's a big launch, you've got to be prepared.
Yeah.
And, you know, and sometimes you're not. It is what it is. But for big launches, you know, the preparedness is really, really important. So, you know, okay, if this isn't going to go the way we need it to, we're going to make a pivot, and it's still going to be a premium pivot. That's another important part is, you know, we're a premium brand, so we have to also make sure that when we show up and we don't get it right, the alternative is still as good as what we thought was plan A.
Yeah. When you look back at this is your second stint at Nike, and when you look back over the company and the corporation and all of the relationships and the things that you've done, what would you say are the things that Nike does or that you guys do really well? Like when you go in or when you talk to people, what are the things that you are super aligned with, and you say, we do this and we do this consistently, and that's a huge part of our success.
Yeah. I think we inspire people and storytell better than anyone in the world.
I'm glad you brought that up. I want to follow up on that, but go ahead, keep going.
I remember watching the 1999 game when Brandi Chastain scored that goal, took her top off, and you saw that swoosh bra. I was like, I need a swoosh bra. I need that bra. I didn't even know it was a swoosh bra. I just need that bra. You know, I was playing soccer at the time, and I had posters all over my room of Mia Hamm and Brandi Chastain, and I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I wanted to be them.
Sure.
And I think that what we do better than anyone in the world is, one, as a brand, we believe in human potential. So it's supporting an athlete who has, you know, you just watch the Olympics happen, and it's supporting athletes who have one of the, you know, the greatest achievements to be the best in the world. So I think we do that better than anyone. And then second, I think it's taking a human truth that athlete has and bringing it in a way that Joe Schmo might feel something too. And I think that's a really special thing that we have somehow been able to do over 50 years.
Well, the storytelling piece I think is critical. Because if you can make me believe that I have something in common with Michael Jordan, then I want to be in his gear.
Yes.
And I think that's been a core. It has to be something that Nike has clearly thought about. Like we're going to tell the story. We're storytellers.
Yes.
And you mentioned that a lot in the stuff that you do. Like you're a storyteller. That's meaningful to you.
Yes.
And by the way, that doesn't just work for Nike. Like, telling stories is the best way to communicate and to connect with people.
Yes. We are by nature storytellers. When you walk in your door at the end of the day and you talked about how your day went, what happened, that was a story. We also make up stories in our head of things that are happening. So I think that is just such a human need and want, and it's something we all do. And we've just found a way to do it that it strikes such a specific chord with you that gives you belief in yourself to do something better than you were today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, would you consider the founder, Phil Knight, the chief storyteller of Nike?
Oh, I don't think he'd say that about himself, but I do think he's an incredible storyteller.
He has an amazing story.
He has an amazing story.
Wow.
I think we all really felt that reading Shoe Dog, and I've read it a few times now. I think that cost of entry at Nike, whether you work in finance or HR or marketing, I think everyone is actually great at telling stories. It's actually part of our culture, and I mentioned the fancy keynotes, but part of that is because we like to storytell to one another. So I think it's just very part of the fabric of the company that he founded is we tell these stories to one another. We sort of romance one another.
Well, it's kind of like you have such a great story to tell. I mean, you guys almost have it too easy. You have such a great story to tell. So at this point, now I understand that you office very nearby Phil Knight.
He's downstairs, right below me. Used to be right behind me, but yeah.
Now he's right below you. So is he ever there though? I mean, he's like the founder of Nike. Isn't he off on a yacht or sailing around the world or doing something else?
It's so fun to he still shows up to the office in his full black.
All black.
It could be July, and he's in like his black turtleneck, his black blazer, his black Nikes, his pants. And he walks the halls, and maybe walking a little bit more slowly these days, but it's so awesome to see him. The first time I haven't shared this story with many people. The first time I ever met Phil Knight, one of my mentors at Nike at the time was the head of biz affairs. He's the one who got the Iceman and in kind of some of like the OG commercials or like rights to like really iconic Beatles music into these ads. So Mark Tomashow, another living legend. Mark was buying me ice cream. It was July, buying me ice cream in the cafeteria, and we turn around and Phil Knight's behind us because he wants ice cream too.
Well, why not? Everybody loves ice cream.
So Phil ends up buying the three of us ice cream. We sit down in this booth, and Mark
he ended up picking up the tab.
Picks up the tab. By the way,
did he say that?
He had to pay.
Put it on my tab. Oh, yeah. What?
So we sit
down. What if
down.
his card declined? That would have been hilarious.
Oh my God, that would have been a really good story. He has a reserved booth in this little cafeteria, so we sit down in his reserved booth, and Mark says, "Phil, I want to introduce you to an upcoming rising star we have here at Nike." And I was working on the digital at the time, and as young talent, and so he's asking me about if I do this thing called Facebook, and we're talking about it, and then he starts telling us. Again, storytelling. He starts telling Mark and I stories about how he bought his grandkids bobbleheads of himself for Christmas, and he was so surprised that they didn't like them.
What? I would love that.
But just anyways, a hilarious encounter, and that was my first time ever meeting Phil one-on-one. And I just remember thinking, God, one, he's just like you and I. Two, he's got just a hilarious sense of humor. He's always sort of finding the humor in things of, it's been worse before, or, we almost went bankrupt. We can do this. And I think also that's really important to bring into the day-to-day with the teams too of, you might feel like everything's on the line. And good, I'm glad you care. But there's life outside of this. If this doesn't go well, you're still going to walk out the store and you're going to have your family and you're going to have your interests and you're going to be fine outside of this. But that was a really funny experience.
With your proximity to Phil Knight, are you able to learn anything from him, or just from his story, or just how he interacts with the Nike team?
I think just over time, because he hasn't been in the work necessarily with these working teams for such a long time, but I really believe it goes back to this ethos of one, just belief in himself. Like he knew that he could do this. He was 23 years old when he started all of this, and
When he started making waffle shoes.
oh, and he was with Bowerman and they were making
Yeah.
waffle shoes, and then second, I think what he has taught us that just really rings true is it's always got to be about serving the athlete.
What did you say earlier about you believe in human potential, or Nike believes in human potential? That's part of the story. I think that's the thing that resonates, or that underlying story of we believe in human potential, and we're building products to help demonstrate all that you can achieve.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at all levels, right? Like right now, in your mind, you're probably thinking about an Elliot Kipchoge breaking 2, or these elite sort of moments, or Michael Jordan. But I'm also thinking about folks who live in certain parts of the world who can't afford a really fancy sneaker, and we want to give you a sneaker affordable at a price point so that you can run your first mile. We do that too.
Yeah.
And so I think that was actually really special when I was in LA. There was a stint that I was over running brand marketing for Los Angeles. We signed a lot of different running crews all over the city, and we would activate these communities, give them product. We worked with students around LA a lot who help a lot of kids, get healthy and run their first miles, run their first marathons. And I think that is so unique to work for a brand that has such a spectrum too, that, you can work with the elite of the elite, and you can work with people who are just running for the first time in their community and just like trying to get them healthy, trying to get them to stay out of trouble, trying to give them a safe place to go after school. So it's really just a special brand in that way.
Yeah, no question. And I can remember growing up when, we had the opportunity to wear Nike with our sporting events, and there wasn't an actual effect.
Yeah.
But when you laced up your Nikes, you thought, well, I can run faster. I can go farther. I can jump higher. I mean, it's just the thing that is so great about the brand, and how it's been so meaningful in the athletics market, and outside of the athletics market as well. Okay, I think that has been really interesting stuff that you've given. Anything else that you want to talk about on leadership, your experience? We're going to get into a little bit of that as we end this podcast. But I do have a few random questions that I'm going to ask. But I'm giving you the opportunity before we get into that segment to close up shop here on all of your experience at Nike.
I would just say to people to just constantly be open to where things can take them. I think you get so stuck in your mind of I'm gonna grow in this linear way. I'm gonna get this title, and I'm gonna get this pay, and I'm gonna grow in this really linear way. And the thing that I've really learned is when you surround yourself with your passion, got great people around you, and you've got great coaches. And by the way, great coaches don't always mean your manager, your direct manager. It's just folks around you who are looking out for you. Be open, because you might get asked to do something that you think that's totally wacky.
Yeah, I shouldn't be doing that, but maybe you should be. And
you get so much out of it. You can get so much out of it. And so I would just say be open. And the second thing I would just share is, I mentioned to you that I'm a mother of a 3-year-old boy, toddler. I had a really insightful conversation with a woman on our board last year, who's a mother, and I asked her, how do you do this? I was back at work after having a baby, running a big team, trying to find myself again, and also really make sure that we were producing at a high pace at work. And she said, well, some days I look at myself like a portfolio, and some days I purposefully plan to take L's at home, and some days I purposefully plan to take L's at work. And when I think of it, that I did it on purpose to have a balanced portfolio, it relieves the guilt I can feel. So I'll tell my husband, okay, this week's a really busy week, and I'm thinking in my head, okay, I might take an L at home, which might mean I might miss a bath time, or I might miss a drop off, because I'm going to take a win here. And it's not in a way that I feel like you have to sacrifice one for another. It's in a way that that's how I'm balanced. Because some days I'm going to need to be 110% here, and some days I'm going to be 110% at home, and I'm going to tell people, hey guys, I'm not going to be online for these hours because I got to go to, a preschool thing.
Yeah.
And it's totally respected. And by the way, I think that is really welcomed in most corporate environments now where it's different. But when I was coming back from my maternity leave, I was still pumping and doing all the things. And I remember feeling this courage I needed to have because I wanted to tell people I was doing that. I was like, oh, that's kind of a weird thing. It's like, no, I'm telling you that because I know that there's probably other women on this call who need to do the same, and I want to give permission to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give permission to women who are leading, that you can lead big teams, and you can pump at the same time. I'm double working right now.
Yeah.
And I remember having some women reach out to me saying, "Thank you so much for saying that. That really meant a lot to me." And so that I think that's been just sort of unique as I step into this next phase of my career, bigger teams, figuring out motherhood, logistics, calendars, my relationship with my husband, and just being able to just try to show up, in the best way we all can. But really thinking about it is like, again, it goes back to sort of like the time optimization.
Yeah.
The very beginning, and how do I want to use the time that I have for these things and get the most out of them? So.
Well, it's really difficult to be 50% here and 50%
Yes.
there, and then you're never you don't feel like you've accomplished.
You're not great anywhere.
Yeah, you're not great anywhere. So
Not great
if
anywhere.
you can through planning and scheduling, understand where you really need to be present
Yep.
and where you can
Yep.
take off. I think that's really
Yep.
important, really critical. And the difficulty is if you're a high achiever. And even if you're not, I mean, people have a sense of I can do it all. I can do
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And
And it's
clearly
just,
that's not true.
And
Yeah.
again, and back to what I was talking about with vulnerability, I actually think that it's quite powerful to tell people, hey guys, I am going to be totally off my shit this week. And I just want you to know that. So I'm going to need you to step in for me and handle this.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Portland, Oregon, so there's some weird Portland school stuff you got to do, like volunteer to feed the chickens or things like that, and it's a real thing. Yeah, it's a Portland thing.
Chickens have to eat too.
And I had a 7:30 call that morning, but I also volunteered to feed the chickens. So it's sort of like, okay, well,
What are you feeding the chickens, by the way?
whatever the chicken food is at school. But
Are you just feeding chickens?
yes. So, instead of saying, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to be on the Zoom as I'm feeding. No, you're not. You're going to call your teammate and say, you know what, I really need you to step in and take this call for me. Now
Can you tell
now
Mr.
you're visualizing me feeding
I can't
chickens.
be in this meeting because I'm feeding the chickens. He'll understand.
I think he'd really understand that, actually.
He'll understand.
Is a really valuable thing to get to tell people because, again, it gives them permission to say, hey, my kid's not feeling well. I'm not going to be able to make this call, or, I'm feeling really off this week. Also opens up for how to have hard conversations too. But again, just saying, hey, I'm really noticing something feels off. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Gives an opportunity to.
Yes.
Okay. Here's the hard-hitting questions.
Okay, I'm ready
of the
for
day.
your hard-hitting questions.
Michael Jordan or King James?
Oh, Michael Jordan.
Okay. I'm glad that you said that. Because younger generation, I'm Michael Jordan all the way.
Are you a LeBron fan at all? It's okay if you're not. You're in a safe space.
I am much more a Michael Jordan fan.
Okay.
Michael Jordan's a killer in a good way. And still to this day, they were telling a story on. I listened to the Dan Patrick Show almost every morning. It's fascinating. There was a story about a Hall of Fame event. It was multidisciplinary, so all the different sports, Hall of Famers together in the same room, and the room full of Hall of Famers goes quiet when Michael Jordan walks into the room. I'm getting chills just saying that. There's nobody else who commands.
He's the epitome of greatness in
Yeah.
some ways. But how do you feel about the infamous flu game? Do you
What do you
remember
mean?
that? The infamous...
I was there. I was
Oh my
at the Delta
gosh.
Center watching that game. I remember when he sat down on the bench after food poisoning and Scottie Pippen hugging him on the bench. He looked like death warmed over.
Yeah. I
And
always joke with my husband that I feel like he's purposefully watching that episode of that show just to upset me. I swear to God, every time I walk into the room, it's like, why are you watching this episode about the
because
flu game?
you were a Jazz fan?
Because I'm a Jazz fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I happen to be able to go to several of the Jazz Bulls playoff games.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was heartbreak
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
Every single time. Another great Nike star, Kobe Bryant, was
Yes.
I was in that arena when he was a rookie.
So good.
And he missed 2 3-pointers at the end of that game.
Yeah.
And the Lakers lost to the Jazz. And you could see a look on Kobe Bryant's face like that's never going to happen again.
No.
And
he's an athlete that really, really inspires my behavior. Kobe Bryant specifically. I love. I don't wake up at 4 a.m. like he did.
oh,
But I
yeah,
love
talk
this.
about work ethic.
But work ethic, and I think about him all the time about how, if he lost, then later that day he'd go right back to the gym after the game and start working again. And I think about him all the time, just like that hunger to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
So he really inspired, and that's part of just living in LA. You just like live in Kobe land. You're just sort of infused
Yeah.
by it. But I think about him all the time when I'm working on something or I'm feeling like something's really hard. I'm like, Kobe. How would Kobe go for this? And I was lucky when I was in LA. We got to work with him and his team, and I just think that I love his notion of how he believed the second act was going to be greater than the first. And I think about, you said I hope I have this long trajectory ahead of me. I don't think it's going to be doing the same thing. So I'm really thinking like I want to have this runway. And I tell everyone, I said, every job that I have, I feel like I'm getting a new master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the time there. I try to soak it all in and get that master's degree because I think that the second act is going to lead up to something totally different. So we'll see what that's going to be.
How exciting. Okay. Favorite Nike-sponsored athlete of all time?
Oh, my God. Of all time. This is really...
Of all time.
Of all time. Kobe Bryant.
Oh.
Kobe Bryant
Easy.
is my favorite Nike-sponsored athlete of all time.
Easy. What about team? Is there a Nike? I mean, all of the Olympic teams.
Yes.
Man.
I mean, I am a soccer girl at heart. So the U.S. Women's National Team is.
Yeah.
I love.
That's a good one.
I love watching all of them. I went to school with Megan Rapinoe. I love watching Sophia Smith and Mal Swanson now play. I just think it's so fun.
Yeah.
I love watching it.
Yeah.
But also, it's been really fun. We were watching Copa and Euro Cup. We're just into watching football, soccer in general. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Who is the athlete? Okay, so you can't say Kobe Bryant because you've already mentioned him like twice.
Okay. I'll pick another one.
Now I'm just thinking about this. Like, that's got to be incredible. Okay, so who was the Nike athlete who walked on campus and you were like awestruck?
Starstruck?
Yes. I mean, it has to happen all the time.
I don't really get super starstruck necessarily by our athletes anymore. Not because I don't feel their greatness, but
it's just
I
so
think,
ho-hum. They're like, oh yeah,
well,
yeah, LeBron's over getting ice cream with Phil Knight in the lunchroom, and Mia Hamm's visiting today, and like, it's just.
I think it's more because at the end of the day, I strip it all back in my mind, and I'm like, they're human just like you and I. They happen to be really great at something super specific.
Let's be honest, they're superhuman.
They are superhuman, but starstruck is a little different. But who was really cool to see actually, and I saw him walking with Phil Knight last year around this time was Colin Kaepernick.
Oh,
I think Colin is just credible human advocate, what he stands for, what he's doing.
Without the hair, how tall would you say Colin Kaepernick
he's so tall.
is actually? Like, is he 6'4" without the hair? And then what is he, 7'2" with the hair? How do you carry that around?
His hair was sort of like slicked back when I saw him, so maybe he had a different look going on.
Like, how does he fit that under the football helmet? And then it all poofed out.
I know.
Nah, I probably wore those.
I think that he's an incredible person, though. I really, really think that he's special.
Colin is making a plea right now
Yes.
to get into the flag football.
For 28. I saw that.
For
We
the
got to
LA.
go.
Wouldn't that be?
We got to go.
Wouldn't that be fascinating?
So cool.
I'm thinking about the flag football for 28, and man,
I'm excited about that. Lacrosse, I think, is going to be awesome.
are they going to allow pro football players in the?
Why not?
Would that be like you have Patrick Mahomes running around playing flag football?
Why not?
How do you stop it?
Why not?
I do. There was one bit of news that I thought you can. I don't care. You can disagree with this if you want. I thought it was fortunate that the 28 Olympics have decided that breaking will not be part
I'm sad about that.
of the competition.
I'm sad about that.
Okay. Maybe generational, maybe not. I grew up with breakdancing was a thing.
Yes.
When I was growing up, that was the beginning of hip hop.
Yes.
In LA and on the East Coast.
Yeah, on the East Coast.
And break dancing culturally is unbelievable.
Yes.
And if you are in that, if you ever get to experience that,
Yep.
it's unbelievable.
Yes.
I really have a hard time feeling like breakdancing is an Olympic sport. And that goes with a few. I'm going to get super controversial. I don't want to do that. But that's one of the Olympic sports where I feel like that's not an Olympic sport. I don't think golf is, and I love golf. Like I don't think golf should be in the Olympics. But I'm more of like, let's get down to like the nitty gritty. What built the Olympics? And it's like track and field, wrestling, swimming, like. I'm kind of like a core.
You're the core
Olympic sports guys. Yeah. And I'm feeling like the ancient Greeks who started the Olympics when they saw breakdancing were probably like, wait.
What's going on?
What is this?
I think dancers, I was fortunate enough to work really closely with some of the world's best dancers last summer. We put on a show in Paris. Mm-hmm. And the way they use their bodies and work, it's probably the same amount of hours and effort that LeBron James puts in the gym. So I think that
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, so I think that it's one. I think dancers should be recognized as athletes. Breaking in the Olympics, I think there are a lot of opinions right now. I will say personally, my opinion is that it belongs there. Maybe we're not ready yet, but I think it belongs there.
I think we're not ready. We'll agree to disagree. And
okay.
There was one unfortunate dance.
That's taking over the internet. Yes.
It's got a lot of. Okay, what is your go-to Nike article of clothing?
I love our Nike Sakai collaborations. So she's a Japanese designer.
Yeah.
All the footwear that we've done with her are my favorite. Those are kind of my go-tos. If I have a big game day and I'm giving a big presentation, you're going to see me probably wear Sakai's because I feel cool in them.
Oh, see, when you lace them up, you think you can do more than you can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I still run a bit, so when I'm running, I love right now I've had so many versions of the Nike Pegasus because I just think it's the best running shoe. So I'm wearing I'm wearing the Pegasus 41, and they just make me feel like I'm bouncing off.
Well, the Pegasus went through this funny thing. The Pegasus was there, and then it was like not, and now it's back.
It's back.
Here's the best thing about the Pegasus. The Pegasus now comes in a golf shoe.
That's right. It does. I'm not a golfer, but
I saw that the other day.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next.
That's going to be your next one. Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be my next Nike.
I just think it's so reliable. It's the total workhorse. So that's my shoe. That's my go-to if I'm working out.
Gotcha. Okay, does your family, only dress your kid and your husband, do they only dress in Nike? Let me ask you this way. Do they have any other athletic brand in their closets?
No, not athletic brand, no. 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 There's probably going to be at some point where my kid says to me, why do you only dress me in this? But we actually he has these little Nikes he wears, and we call them his fast shoes.
Oh, yeah.
So, because if you have a toddler, like trying to get them dressed and out the door is like, an Olympic sport in itself.
Yeah. Well, I would put that over breaking.
Yeah. So I always tell him, okay, we're going to go, but you got to get on your fast shoes. And he's like, okay, he's, willing to put on his fast shoes because he wants to be fast. So
Absolutely. Is he going to take up track and field?
well, my husband's 6'4", so he's really tall.
Yeah.
He's got sort of this swimmer's build, and he's got really long legs. And he actually he's 3, just did his first 1K on Nike campus the other week, the Bowerman
Nice.
1K.
Amazing.
So we'll see. We won't force it. My husband and I, our rule is sort of like he's got to get into something. But
Yeah, I agree.
But whatever that is, whether it's more arts or in the sports, we'll support him. But he has to find something.
Yeah, for sure.
He's not really. He's a little into like art projects here and there, but he just loves being outside.
Mm-hmm.
Loves being outside. My husband golfs a lot, so he's always playing in front of him. I think he wants to get him motivated early.
Yeah.
So it's really fun.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
Really good idea. Okay. Tell me about obstacles that you've had to overcome in your life and your experience that have really benefited you today.
I have 2. One personal that was really, really challenging. So back in 2018, my dad passed really suddenly, actually. He had an accident. He passed really suddenly. I took a couple of months off of work. And, the good thing that comes from grief is when you recognize that there is a way through it. And it has just given me so much perspective. I think like those of us who have gone through really difficult personal things, you're sort of like, oh, yeah, like at the end of the day, you're selling shoes and sneakers. So like we can get through this. And honestly, that specific experience, when things are flying at me or you've got board meetings or really big things coming, I can stay like this. People are like, God, you're always so even keel. I even got this feedback one time that was written, Cam is grace under pressure. But I really think it's because you sort of feel like, man, I think I've experienced like something so deeply painful. And when you know that, this can't be that. So we can get through this. There's an answer to this. You can see your way through this. If you can see your way through the worst, you can get through that. So more on a personal note. On a professional note, I think some of the obstacles that I just continued to face, one was when I joined the creative team, you're joining Nike Creative, which is like the pinnacle of the pinnacle creative teams around the world. And I'm supposed to lead this team. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know a thing about typography. I couldn't tell you about this font weight. I'm not a writer. What do they want with me overseeing one of the world's best creative teams? And I just went through this massive imposter syndrome. Moved up to Portland with my husband. Go to the office 15 times and COVID happens. World shuts down.
Whoa.
So I'm supposed to manage this team, work from home, and I don't know really a thing about this subject matter. But I've always had taste. And I believe in my gut that you can't teach taste. So 6 months in.
So now you know how we're not aligned on breaking?
On breaking, yes.
Yeah, I think we're aligned.
We're aligned on the taste piece? Okay.
There we go.
So I finally, and I'm also, like I just said to you, all about best effort. So I'm kind of dying, letting stuff go out the door under my watch. And I don't feel like it's maybe best effort, or it's not my best. I know it's not my best effort. It's not my best effort in the sense I'm not stopping things or catching things or helping make them better the way I deeply know I can, because I'm in my head. I've got this massive imposter syndrome. So that was a big, big obstacle to overcome. So I decided to go on my rule number 1 of vulnerability. And I decided in a one-on-one to tell my direct report, who probably went to one of the best art schools in the entire country, to say to him, I'm having master imposter syndrome leading this team because I don't know what you know and I can't do what you do. Like I can't get into Photoshop and make that really cool. And he says to me, Cam, it's because you weren't raised like us that we trust you. I'm like, what? What does that mean? And he's like, you just bring a completely different, fresh perspective into our work, and you know modern marketing. You know the way this work is supposed to show up on these platforms. You know the way that it's supposed to reach more people, and you can help us do that. So we trust what you're telling us. And so from there, I made this huge pivot into, okay, trust your gut, tell people what you're thinking. You don't have to know all the technical language, but just say, hey guys, in my gut, this isn't landing with me. Here's why I think why. What do you think about this? So I think that the vulnerability piece has continued to allow me to overcome a lot of obstacles. It could be with direct team I manage. It can be with peers. It can be with my superiors. But when I just can be real with people and let them know, here's what you're going to, it might be sometimes people are asking you for 10 things, and in your gut, you can probably give them 3 of them well.
Yeah.
And so you tell them that, hey, do you want me to deliver you 10 okay things? Or would it be okay if I do 3 things better than anyone on this planet has done? They're going to want those 3. So you kind of give them choice too. So I think, just, vulnerability, being really direct and honest, doing it in a caring way has really been kind of the ground I play in.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about kind of those things like work philosophy, life philosophy, but I think we've sprinkled that in throughout this conversation, and we probably have a good sense of where you land, what your foundation is. Let me ask you about this. I mean, you're in a position and you're with a company that are very, very highly regarded. And there's going to be there's people sitting in this room, and there's going to be lots of people who are listening to this who think, well, how am I supposed to get to be that thing in Nike?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to get to Nike? I mean, it wasn't necessarily your plan to be at Nike, but you had all these passions that led you that way. What's the message? Like, how do you inspire, or what do you tell people who are like just starting out and have these desires to find themselves in a position like yours someday?
Well, so first of all, I never thought I'd be where I'm at. And actually, I tell people all the time, people are like, oh, do you aspire to be some CMO or CEO? Absolutely not. I don't. I've really always followed the joy in the work. And I think what I would tell people who are trying to figure out how they get into Nike or how they figure out, their passions and their careers is, first of all, tell people what you want if you do know. I think the majority of people are willing to help folks get in the door places. And I always tell people, if you don't tell people your vision, they can't help you carry it. You got to tell people what you want. And that can change over time. That's okay too. One day you can decide you want to be the best photographer, and the next day you can decide you want to be, an incredible marketer. You can change over time, but tell people what you want. And I think when you tell people what you want, they, for some reason, I think it's human nature, want to help you. So, when I mentor people and they're like, I really want to get in at Nike or want to do this, I first just try to think about, okay, who are the folks that I can connect them with that are closer to that specific thing? Or I'm really direct with them of, hey, when you set up a one-on-one with someone, make sure you know what you can get out of what you want out of that conversation. Be specific with them. Here are the 3 things that I'm kind of wrestling with that I would love your help on. I also, every single job that I've had, I got this great advice from a GM that I worked for back in LA. Every job that she's had, she builds her board of directors for that job.
Oh, I've seen where you've talked about that. You have a board of your own.
It's really important to me.
Board of directors. I think your mom is part of
my
the
mom
board.
is on my board. My husband is on my board.
Yeah.
And then pending the subject matter of my role at the time, I try to find someone who's not at Nike, who does this in the real world at another company. I try to find someone who's in the marketing industry, not at Nike, and then someone at Nike who I highly regard, and it could be
Is it Phil
peer.
Knight? I mean, that's right? You just put Phil Knight on your board.
Well,
I would put my card, Phil Knight's on my board of directors.
These board members do have to be willing to make time to sit with me and give me feedback. So
ice cream at Phil's table.
Kind of busy guy.
Thursdays at noon.
But I think that's really important because anytime
I think it's great advice.
You start a job, you got to think about yourself as a company. You've got goals for yourself as a company. Okay, what am I doing to track towards those goals? And if you don't have people who are looking at you on the outside in your performance, then you only have yourself as a measure, and that's not very good.
Yeah.
So,
you've mentioned a few things. I love this concept of your own personal board of directors. You've mentioned that you work with an executive coach. I think that's very important. I love your thought about each experience that you have is its own master's program, and you're learning and learning and learning. Okay, outside of all of those really amazing things, what do you do? What are the things that you find that really inspire you or help you, or is it? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you read books? Do you have a personal philosophy that you follow?
I love podcasts as well. Actually, recently we were at a team offsite and we heard from an incredible neuroscientist, Dr. Tara Swart. She wrote this book called The Source that I'm reading right now. But just really, have you read that one?
I haven't read it. I know about this book, though.
Okay,
Yes.
it's freaking awesome, and it's really interesting talking about, the things that you need to like show up and be high performing. One of those things being rest, like real rest and sleep 8 hours. Like there's no cover up for that. There's nothing you can take that replaces real sleep and rest. I'm learning a ton around, from her book, also just around neuroscience. There's actually science that if you walk into a room, if I walked into this room and thought about, what does Frank think of me? That actually...
Very highly, by the way. Very highly.
But if I'm thinking about that versus what I'm giving to you, it actually makes me dumber. Like there's actually science proven that there's a part of the back of your brain and it takes away some of your IQ when you are so concerned what other people are thinking about you. You're like losing stuff versus thinking about what can I give? Like I am a channel and I have something to
That's
give.
so fascinating. I think that is the key to people who struggle with public speaking, because you walk into a room and instead of thinking about, I have a message, you're
to
thinking,
give to you.
Yes, to offer.
Yes.
You're thinking about why all of these people are judging me right
Yes.
here. That's fascinating.
So
Absolutely.
that's been pretty powerful to me, just in terms of something I'm reading, listening to. A new fascination really is neuroscience. I'm super fascinated by the brain, so I've been listening to a ton of her. I love listening to, I'm kind of all over the place with podcasts, sports podcasts, because my husband will send stuff to me, or I'll listen to different business podcasts to also like stay up on, the story of Starbucks or the story, I like listening.
I know, they're all fascinating.
You sort of love listening to these moments too, where like, their company is about to crumble. And so they pull everyone into the Seahawks stadium and like, tell them it's either, we come together or your families aren't going to have food on the table. Like I get really inspired listening to those types of podcasts. But I think outside, just to get inspiration, I love traveling. My husband and I, even with a little one, he's been on 40 airplane rides already. We love to travel. So just getting out, we love going to museums. We love different types of music. And I think just my husband totally laughs at me, but like we'll be at dinner, we'll be on a date night, and I'll look at someone next to me and I'm like, God, I bet that they met on Tinder. This is their first date. And then I think this is what she does for her life. And I share this because I've recently been into looking up script writing. I'm so curious by people's lives, and I'm so curious by other storytellers. We got to hear from the incredible Ava DuVernay as a team. And she talked about how her grandma told her, well, if you're bored, you're boring. That phrase, if you're bored, you're boring. And I just think that something I am so interested in right now is learning how to storytell for myself, not for Nike, for myself, and to kind of use this in my own way. So I don't know, maybe the next time we speak, I will have written something.
Whoa, I wouldn't be surprised.
But that's kind of a fun interest for me right now.
Whoever described you as, like, I don't know how you do this, because there's so much stuff in this. I don't know how long we've been here. Hour and a half? Like, there's so much stuff that you do and that you're doing, and you seem so, like, not on edge. Like, you're so level. It feels like whoever described you as just running around the track, like, you're just running around the track.
Just running around the track, just having a good time.
In the flow state, just running around. Like, I think I'm going to have to envision that more regularly when I'm, like, there's lots of stuff coming down.
Yeah.
I'm just running around the track.
Just running around the track.
Just keep swimming. I mean, it's like the...
And you don't want to step outside of the lane, So I think whenever, I can't remember which, if this is the Harrison assessment or one of those kind of leadership assessments folks take, but they show you under stress, people flip to a different version of themselves that most people don't know. And so I instead of visualizing the flip, I actually visualize more of like, I don't want to step outside the lane. Like I can feel myself getting, upset or anxious about something right now. Just don't step outside of the lane. Like bring yourself back to center and think about, okay, is this a problem to be solved? Is this more just a polarity that we're dealing with? If it's a polarity, then we just need to make a choice of which side we're going to end up on this polarity. But I try to just really I tell people all the time, when something's really stressful, I usually just visualize like a center. And I'm just here. I'm like, okay, well, in those moments, you do have choice. You can decide to I want to blow up and be an insane person up here. and be someone that, people don't
Yes.
respect and don't really understand. Or I can also do nothing. That doesn't really feel very leadery of me.
Yeah, right.
And so I usually just try to stay here and ask a lot of questions. Like I find myself asking a lot of questions like, okay, well, like, what do you think about this? How do you think that we got here? Or, what would you like to do if you feel like you were in control here?
Mm-hmm.
And then help folks arrive places versus tell them what to do. But yeah.
Well, Kamauri, this has been so insightful and so meaningful and powerful. And the way I've learned so much today about the way that you manage all of these things. It feels like what you do and everything that is surrounding you in your life could be overwhelming, and you just manage it in such a nice way. I think it's an unbelievable lesson for everybody. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here and sharing that with us, but this has been unbelievable. And I hope you will allow us as you can, the sky's the limit for you. One day I wouldn't be surprised if you're sitting in Phil Knight's chair. Like that's where that's where you're headed. So
well, thank you so much for
amazing
having
story.
me, Frank. This has been really fun. I can honestly talk all day, so I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, Cam. Thank you. There you go. Know Your Ship podcast. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.